Hey friends, welcome back. I am Jason and let's discuss winter clothing options for a wilderness setting. So we've transitioned to more urban winter wear. Everybody's heard it before, right? Dress in layers. And we always talk about dressing in layers, and pretty much everybody that knows anything about anything says dress in layers. And it's not necessarily because it's warmer to do so. Like one great big giant onesie filled full of down is probably warmer than anything else you could put on. However, you can't adjust to the changing temperatures or your changing activity levels throughout the day if you've got this giant big one thick layer on. So that's why most people recommend that you dress in layers. So I can shed this outside layer if I start to get a little bit warm. I can shed this outermost layer, stuff it in a pack, and then be on my way so I don't overheat, because if you overheat, you start to sweat, and if you sweat, you get wet, and if you get wet, once you stop moving, you get really cold, and it's difficult to recover from that without some sort of external heat source or just going inside. And if that's not an option, that's gonna be really tough. So dressing in layers is what I always recommend in a wilderness environment. Not that I'm in a wilderness right now. This is my property. My house is a couple hundred yards away, but you get the idea. If I was planning on going into a wilderness area, this is how I would dress. Or if I was planning on working outside all day, regardless of what it is that I was doing, if I was on some sort of construction project, if I was having to clear some land, if I was having to just be outside in the elements all day, this is how I would dress. And or if I was just hunting, that's another one. If I was out and I knew I was going to be out for an extended period of time, this is how I would do it. So on top of my head, I have a wool cap. This is a hand-knitted wool cap made by my grandmother. So it's pretty nice. Just the thought keeps me warm. So I've got a wool cap on top of my head that I can take on, I can take off, and this is usually the first thing that comes and goes when I'm working, when I'm building up a little bit of heat and getting a little sweat going. You take this thing off and it helps you regulate your core temperature a little bit. So having a wool knit cap on top of your head that can come down over top of your ears, I think is a really big deal. Aside from this, I would just have a ball cap that I could switch on because I like to have a hat on top of my head. But around my neck, I usually wear this neck gaiter, and this neck gaiter is fantastic for all sorts of things. I'm a huge neck gaiter fan because I can pull it up over my face like that, and it helps keep my nose, my ears, my neck, everything, my face a little bit warmer. It keeps my lips from getting chapped. It's a pretty big deal, and that's why I'm such a big believer in the neck gaiter. I think it's a really important key piece of clothing, piece of kit that you should invest in. So I like this one. This one comes from TRC Outdoors. Really good dudes in the UK, actually. Moving on. Maggie, what are you doing? You're wet. You are wet, and you are standing on my clothes. You're ridiculous. She gets nasty and soaking wet, and then she gets cold, and then she comes to me for warmth and tries to lay on top of me and everything that I've got going on here. If it was much colder temperatures, you could always wear a fleece neck gaiter such as this one, or a scarf, or some sort of wool cashmere type scarf. I've got a cashmere scarf that I only wear on special occasions because it's fancy. But if it was really cold, that would be an additional layer that would be nice to have. It's something to wrap around your neck, and that's a big deal. Don't knock the camera off the log, you dog. Get out of here. Get out of here. On my hands, I've got some gloves. I used to wear the Gorilla gloves, the thin, flexible, maintain your dexterity Gorilla gloves, but I've switched over to these. These are GRX Palm Wick technology. GRX Palm Wick. These are pretty good because you can still feel what you're doing. They're cut resistant, abrasion resistant, and they keep my finger, like when I'm working with my hands a lot in the wintertime, I get these big cracks. I don't have too many right now because I've been diligent on paying attention and putting my gloves on, but I get these big cracks in the ends of my fingers, and it's pretty painful and really irritating actually, and it takes a long time for those to heal. But if I wear gloves, even little thin ones like this, that usually doesn't happen. Because when you're touching stuff, the oils from your hands are getting rubbed off, and it just ends up drying your hands out, and they crack in the cold weather. So these thin gloves like this allow me to feel what I'm doing and keep my hands warm enough and keeps that cracking from happening. So I like these thin gloves. Aside from these, if I step it up a little bit, if I'm doing some heavier work, I like the deer hide gloves, the buckskin gloves. Those are where it's at. Maggie, you're literally breathing on the microphone, and that's probably pretty disruptive. Weird dog. Where were we before I was rudely interrupted again? All right. Gloves. So yeah, the deer hide gloves I like a lot. Those are great, especially once they get broken in, because they kind of just form fit to your hands, which is really, really nice. I don't wear gloves all the time. I don't like wearing gloves, to be honest with you. But they are handy and needed in some situations. Gore-Tex gloves are great if you know your hands are gonna be getting wet. If you're fishing, hunting, all that kind of stuff, those are really nice. So, but typically I don't like to wear gloves unless I absolutely need them. And I know, here we go, before we get too much further, I know all of you up northians, everyone that's gonna say, you know, oh, it's minus 37 degrees out, and that's the high for the day, and you don't know what cold is until you've come to here. And I live in Antarctica. All right, yeah, I get it. But everything's relative, and it's all about what you've acclimated to. So yeah, you're gonna be able to handle the cold a little bit better if you live in a place where the snow never melts. I get it. Anyway, I live in the South, and cold temperatures here is like around 0 Fahrenheit. So that's real cold. That's about as cold as it gets for the most part. We've seen negative temperatures, of course, from time to time, but I think the coldest I've ever seen here was -9, I think. That's the coldest I've ever experienced here in North Georgia. Wear this. I like to wear a vest. This is one of my favorite vests, actually. I bought this for $5, I don't know, at least 10 years ago. Probably more like 15 years ago. And this vest I wear all the time. I've just about wore it out, and I've got a couple new ones now to replace it because this one's just about on its last leg. But I really like a vest because it allows your underarms to breathe, because that's where you're going to build up precipitation. Perspiration, good grief. Perspiration, that's where it's going to build up under your arms, and you're going to get it wet there, and that's a no-go for me. So I like a vest because it allows your arms to breathe a little bit and doesn't restrict movement of your arms. So that's why I like a vest, and it still keeps your core nice and warm. So I'm a big fan of a vest, regardless of if you're a fan of puffy vests or not. That's kind of my go-to, but that's what I like on the outside. And then underneath that, if temperatures are cold, I like to have a fleece like this one underneath it. Sometimes it'll be just a heavier duty wool layer underneath, but I like a fleece like this because if you do get these wet or you sweat them or anything like that, they dry super fast and they weigh really nothing. It's getting a little thin in a couple spots, but it's still going strong. I've got some burn holes in it from being near the fire, which, yeah, with man-made materials such as fleece, you're gonna have to be careful around fires and stuff. So, because they're gonna get holes in them. Usually a lot of my clothes, especially like my puffy jackets and vests and stuff, have little pieces of duct tape over the holes because the feathers start coming out. This doesn't have down in it, so I don't worry so much about that, but you could patch the holes with a little piece of duct tape if you're not too concerned with how it looks. Underneath my fleece, I have just a wool long sleeve shirt. So a nice, really nice wool long sleeve shirt. This one I think is not Icebreaker. I usually buy Icebreaker stuff when it comes to the wool, but this one is a different brand, and I'm going blank on what it is right now, but it doesn't matter. Just one of the better wool shirts. This is a really nice one, and I like this one a lot. And underneath that, I would probably either wear nothing or another wool t-shirt. This is a cotton blend t-shirt that I wouldn't advise if you're going to be in a wilderness type setting for any length of time, because one, if you wear it multiple days in a row, it's going to start to stink, which is nasty, especially the blend stuff. Or the completely man-made materials, the synthetics, those really stink if you wear them for multiple days in a row. So that's why I like the wool. I would probably just wear this as my base layer, and that alone. The cotton t-shirt underneath, if you do sweat in it, you do get it wet at all, it takes a long, long time to dry out, especially if it's underneath other layers. It just won't dry out unless you take it off, which is kind of irritating. So I wouldn't recommend that. It's just more comfortable because I have something concealed here. I don't like the cold steel against my skin. I'm very sensitive. I don't know if you were aware of that. Very sensitive emotionally and physically. So I don't like the cold steel against my skin, so I usually have a t-shirt tucked underneath that. But and a wool t-shirt would be a fine choice for that. The problem with the wool t-shirts, especially the thinner varieties, anything under like a 200 weight, the problem with those is that they wear out fast. It's just the way, they're just not as durable. They do not last as long. I've got some like cotton blend t-shirts from 15 plus years ago that I could still wear and they're still fine. Cotton or the wool t-shirts, the thin ones, they'll last me maybe a year, maybe a little longer before they start getting little holes in them, and then those holes spread, and then then they become not unwearable, but they just look bad. And nobody wants to be wearing around a t-shirt that's got a bunch of holes in it. So geese migrating. That's not south, dudes. It's not south. These pants are true spec expedition pants, and these have been my go-to for several years now. I really like these pants for lots of reasons. They dry pretty fast. They're durable in the right places. They stretch in the right places. They stretch on the backside here when you're squatting down. They stretch on the crotch area. The pockets here, the cargo pockets stretch, which is nice to accommodate bigger, bulkier items like clothing and stuff that you need to stick in there. So I really like those. There's a couple things that I don't like about them. One, the back pockets here. The back pockets here almost always get holes in them. Almost always my wallet has fallen through. There's only a single stitch on the back side here on this back pocket, and once that gets, this is the only pair I have, I think, that hasn't gotten the holes in. I guess this is my newest pair. Also, around the legs here are these zippers and adjustments, ventilation zippers here. These snaps so you can change the width of the opening right here. I never use this. I think it's useless. I don't like it. I don't use the ventilation things. I don't see the need in my life. It's also got this clip here so you could attach it to your boot lace so your pants don't ride. I just don't use any of this stuff on here, and it's just extra bulk, and sometimes it gets uncomfortable when I tuck it down in my boots. So other than that, I really like these pants. Other than those couple little details, I really like these pants. I haven't found anything I like better. Wool socks. These are just inexpensive wool socks that I get from Costco. I like these a lot. My favorite socks are darn tough socks, but they're darn expensive as well. Yes, I know they have a lifetime warranty, which is crazy. Even if you wear them out, you send them back and then replace them. But they still are expensive. I think they're like 30, 40 bucks for a pair of socks, which is expensive. These are a lot more inexpensive, and this is kind of my daily wear kind of socks right here. These wool socks from Costco. In the wintertime, I like rubber boots. This is what I wear. These are Lacrosse Alpha Burley Pros. These are what I wear in the wintertime because I can just stomp through the mud, the muck, the snow. It does not matter. Whatever the conditions are, these are fine. They're not insulated. I don't live in the Arctic. I don't live where it's minus 40 degrees all the time, so I don't need insulated boots. These are very lightly insulated boots. They're just, and I buy a half size big in the boots. That way I can put a heavier sock in there if I need to. A thicker wool sock. That's where I get my insulation from. In the wintertime, I will always wear a long john pants right here. These are 32-degree heat. These are also, I think I get these from Costco as well. They're just kind of a synthetic, stretchy long john. I like the merino wool long johns. I have several pairs of those. I like those. I prefer those, but again, they don't last as long. These last quite a while before they get any holes in them, and they just seem to hold up much, much better. They don't work as well, and they do get stinky. They'll get smelly if you wear them for multiple days in a row, unlike the wool. The wool is amazing for that. I don't get it. It's just an amazing material. So, but some sort of base layer underneath the pants is what I always do when the weather starts getting cold. One of my absolute favorite pieces of outerwear is gonna be this Swanee right here. This comes from New Zealand, and it is made from wool, a heavy-duty wool. It comes down really nice and long. I'll throw it on so you can see what it looks like. It is basically, another name for this would be like an anorak. You know, that's what a popular term for this would be. That's what a lot of people would call this. It's just a heavy-duty wool. In New Zealand, they refer to this as a hunting shirt, if I'm not mistaken. And they would typically wear this in traditional style. They would wear this with a vest over top of it, and shorts underneath with gum boots, rubber boots on top of that. So it's a good look. This with a vest in conjunction with shorts and gum boots. extremely stylish. But anyway, I really like this. And it's got a really nice hood, which can protect you from the elements. And the sleeves are huge, so you can tuck your hands inside the sleeves like this if you're leaned up against a tree hunting, waiting on the deer to come or whatever. That's a really nice way to do it. I have added this pocket, this kangaroo pocket here. I think that it's a necessity. I gotta have, in a shirt like this, I need to have pockets, right? I wanna have a place to stash my gear, my gloves. I wanna have a place to warm up my hands, so I've added this big pocket right here. It doesn't come with that. But this is an amazing piece of gear. I have worn this in some really bad weather. I've worn it in pouring rain, like pouring rain. I have worn it in wet, soppy, nasty snow when the temperature's right at that freezing point where the snow, as soon as it hits you, it starts to melt. That's a dangerous conditions to be in, because it's just, you get wet and you get so cold if you're not dressed appropriately. The water just doesn't absorb into it. It's crazy. There's no waterproofness to it other than the wool itself. There's no Gore-Tex liners. There's nothing like that. But I've worn this in hours of rain before, and it's just fine. I stay warm and I stay dry underneath. The sheep have it figured out. I don't know. If I want to sit down on the wet, nasty ground like that, I have my butt protected from the wet, nasty, soppy, wet leaves and stuff. It comes down to just about my knee. So any rain that's come, this is going to be the part of your pants that gets the wettest is right here. Like when you're walking through brush and stuff and it's starting to rain or whatever, this part of your pants gets really wet, and this helps protect it right there. So I really like that. And I guess that's why the New Zealanders, the Kiwis, wear the shorts, because this part of their pants doesn't exist and it doesn't get wet. So that's, I guess that's the theory behind it. If we're talking about hunting, the warmer you are, the more comfortable you are, the less you're going to be moving around and fidgeting and all that stuff, and the more likely you're going to have success on your hunt. And I guess that could go to a situation where you're being hunted as well. So being able to be still, being able to be comfortable, even in really nasty conditions, is going to be beneficial for lots of different reasons. So this is how I would dress in the wintertime. I would also have a poncho that I could throw over top of this if the weather was really nasty. Now let's discuss what I would wear and how I would change what I'm wearing to a more urban type setting. Let's talk about that for a second, because if I dressed like this, walking in and out of the restaurants and the shopping mall, not that I go to those very often, if I can avoid it, but if I dressed like this, I would look like kind of a weirdo. Because even though you are in a warm, heated, climate-controlled building and vehicle, there's a good possibility that you might have to spend a little bit extra time outside, and you need to be dressed accordingly. So we've transitioned to more urban winter wear, and it's pretty much all the same principles. It just looks a little less woodsy, and you don't stick out like a sore thumb in a more urban environment. But basically the same principles apply. I've got a puffy jacket here that's really, really warm and keeps me insulated. The problem with this, once it does get wet, the down compresses and then it no longer insulates at all. So that's why it's important to have some sort of outer layer, such as this Gore-Tex jacket right here, to go over top all of it. And this Gore-Tex jacket will keep my insulating down-filled jacket nice and dry and keep me warm. This breaks the wind. It's really, really comfortable, pretty practical, and doesn't really stick out in an urban environment. So I've just got a long sleeve button-up shirt that I think that's pretty practical and probably looks fairly normal, but it's still an extra layer of insulation on my body to keep myself nice and cozy and warm. And underneath this is where it's really important. This is a wool long sleeve shirt that I do really, really like. It's a 200 weight wool shirt from Icebreakers. That is the clothing that is touching my skin, so it's going to wick the moisture away from me. It's going to keep me nice and warm, even if it was to get a little bit of wet from precipitation or perspiration. I've still got the same long johns on underneath, my jeans here. Again, jeans are not ideal for an outdoor type setting because the ones that get wet, it takes a while for them to dry out, but we're making some compromises in order to blend into a more urban type environment. Same socks that I always wear, same wool socks, and then just some nice sturdy leather comfortable shoes to walk around town in. I keep my neck gaiter that I always have in my back pocket, just like I would normally. The jeans have all my normal everyday carry stuff in them on my belt or in my pockets, all the same stuff that I would have on me in my cargo pants. The weather where I live changes drastically. It could be 65 degrees and raining right now like it is, and it could be 20 degrees with 6 inches of snow on the ground in the morning. It's really, really hard to tell and difficult to predict sometimes. So dressing appropriately, dressing in layers, I think is the key. Whether you are in a wilderness environment or an urban setting, I hope you have found these clothing tips to be helpful. Ask lots of questions in the comment section. Hit that thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I cannot wait to see you on the next one. I'm Jason Salyer with Survival Dispatch. As a Survival Dispatch insider, you'll be able to gain the knowledge, the skills, and equipment necessary to protect your family when it really, really matters. They'll provide crucial information on such things as stockpiling food, medical necessities, communication plans. You will receive specific, actionable plans that can deliver proven techniques to help you get home, shelter in place, or bug out safe.